Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation, to live your highest truth. One tool that I like to use is divination. Looking outside of myself. It's great to tune in the meditation, to look for answers, but it's also really cool to have a tool. And one of the most favorite long-standing tools are tarot cards. And here's my deck right here. I actually got the Rider's Waite deck in Spanish for some reason. So I have to admit, I don't know that much about these cards, but when I pull them, there's a lot there. So why not talk to an expert about that? Welcome, Julia Gordon-Bramer.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Bonnie.
Thank you, you too. Let's double check that I've pronounced your last name correctly.
You have. Yeah, right. Bramer. Like lion tamer.
Yes, I like that. Well, help us tame, all there is to know about the tarot. So before you kick in on that, let's let everybody know about your new book, okay? It's called Tarot Life Lessons. And do you say the tarot? Tarot? I
say tarot. And I always say tarot. It's not wrong unless it rhymes with carrot. When people say tarot, that's when I go, oh, no. But some people accent it one way, and I just learned to say tarot, and I don't think there's a wrong way. I don't judge it.
I think it just flows. So I first encountered the cards when I was in high school, and they kind of creeped me out. We're talking specifically about the Rider-Waite deck, and those are some of the oldest images for the tarot that are out there. So tell us how you came across these cards, to the extent that you're now writing books about it.
Yeah. And they do scare some people because they have cards like the Death card and the Devil card. I just had an interview with somebody recently who talked about a shop in the Northeast that sold decks, and they took all the Devil cards out, and I was like, that's crazy. But,
oh, no.
But how I came upon them, I was 16, and this is actually the first story in my book, Tarot Life Lessons. I have a story matched with each of the major arcana cards, starting with the first card number 0, which is the Fool. And that is my story. So the Fool card is, innocent and does not have a plan. Oh, there you go. And is just, you can see he's about to step off a cliff. And we kind of don't know whether he's going to just step down to a step below or into an abyss forever falling. And I suppose, it's about adventure. And I think that sort of sums up my journey with the tarot, because I was like the Fool, just innocently looking to have a good time. And I was 16, and I wandered into this magic shop in a mall. And this was in the 1970s. I will be turning 60 in the month of November here. And so I'm revealing my age. But so I wandered into this magic shop, which back in the 1970s, a magic shop was not like the spiritual stores you see today, these new agey places. It was magic tricks. It was rabbits in hats and gag gifts and hats with false bottoms and wands and all of that kind of thing. So amongst all of the tricks was a deck of tarot cards, and I talk about this very cool shop girl who was, probably really only about 5 or 6 years older than I was. But to me, she seemed to have all the wisdom of the ages, And she said, do you want to see some real magic?
Oh, cool.
And she brought me over to the case and she showed me, and that was it.
Oh, my gosh. And was it the Rider-Waite deck?
It was.
Just out of curiosity. Yeah.
And I hold, this is it. This is what all the decks are based on, all the best decks, I should say, because the symbolism they just nailed it. Now, there are many other very good decks. I mean, my very favorite deck is right here. It's the Alchemical deck,
okay,
which is by Robert Place, and it is very similar to the Rider-Waite. But the Rider-Waite is what the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn constructed at the turn of the century, based on the Kabbalah Tree of Life, and so it has all of the Kabbalistic systems represented within these pictures. And that's why when you look at a tarot card, there's so much meaning, there's so much potential in each card, and it can work for so many different situations. And just a beautiful experience.
What did the Fool mean? So when you said it was the first, so your book takes us through the journey of all the different cards in order, right, of the major arcana. And then, so are they chronological lessons for you? Is that how that worked? Or
so these stories I had written over years in my journals. They're actual, in fact, my working title for this book was The Tarot Diaries. And I had not planned to match them up to tarot cards. They were written just for me. I'm also a poet and a creative writer. And so writing is just how I express. And I wanted to remember the conversations, and I wanted to remember the little movements and the things I learned with my clients, because I'm always, it's very much a mutual experience. And so when I'm reading for somebody, I'm not just telling them about their life, I'm feeling their stuff with them, and I'm helping them process it. And a lot of times they're doing something for me, teaching me something important about myself. And so all of this is woven into the story. So it's not just, like a classic tarot book will tell you what a card means. And I'm not really doing that. This is not a resource book, but you can see how I read cards.
Yes.
You can see how I process something in front of me and apply it to the situation at hand. How sometimes I'll even break the rules, and sometimes I'll see a meaning in a card that you wouldn't necessarily find in any book. So getting back to the Fool card, what I did was, because I'm also a scholar of the poet Sylvia Plath. Oh, and I should say those stacks of boxes behind me are my new book for my book release party.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Because I'm also a scholar of the poet Sylvia Plath and her mysticism, and that's a whole other thing. I have another book coming out next year with the same publisher called The Occult Sylvia Plath. But I've been a scholar of her for over 15 years, and her work was all based on the same Kabbalistic structure. She aligned her great work, Ariel, with the tarot. And not a whole lot of people know this, but it's kind of my life work to redeem her and get her away from that suicidal drama that everyone knows her as, and have people understand her, that she was a genius's genius. But so I learned so much from her on how she constructed her system. And it always, all of her work from Ariel on, it was all in this sort of tarot order. And so just for fun, I did it for myself.
What a clever idea. No, it's really great. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Fool at the beginning? Because, I mean, how appropriate that it should be aligned with one of your earlier, in the beginning of you discovering this path. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the Fool is number 0. He's just starting life. And he's a card. Some people say he's part of the major arcana. Some people say the minor. And most often he's thought to be a bridge and kind of neither. He hasn't found himself yet. He's not even on path yet. And so, very much like a teenager might be, the Fool is playful and innocent. Sometimes people get the card and they think, "Oh, you're calling me a fool," and I say, "No, it's a positive card when it's right side up. When it's upside down, we can have some regrets, and it can be a card of accidents and mistakes. But generally, the Fool is seen as innocent, is seen as a child, and naive, and no plan. You had shown that card, and I was talking about how he's about to step off a cliff. There's no safety net with the Fool. The Fool just throws himself out there and sees what happens.
Yeah, young, like beginner, like teenage.
Yeah,
the wild energy of the young, of the teenage.
Exactly, and wild energy. He is considered mythologically to be Dionysus. So, that wild spirit, or some people, I think the Romans would call him Bacchus, and just that animal nature. The alchemists relate the Fool to the base nature before we've learned anything, before we've had any sort of spiritual teachings or rules even.
Excellent. Okay, that's really cool. I by the way, Julia told me before we got on here that she will be doing a reading for us. So we'll talk a little bit further, but stay with us as you're listening, because she's got a read for all the audience. So Julia, I have a special request. Can we talk about the magician? What's the story about the magician? That's
sure.
My favorite.
The story in my book,
yes,
about the
please.
magician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of a tragic story. I mean, a lot of my stories are not necessarily happy ones, but I like to think that they're universal ones, and they're stories that we know these people. Either they're us, or they're somebody close to us, or we've at least seen or heard the story. And the magician was this elderly widow who came to see me regularly, and she had fallen in love with a man on the internet. And, of course, she never got to talk to him, and they never met. And he basically was a scam artist, and he got her life savings from her. And it was just a heartbreaking story. You will see me wrestling with boundaries,
okay,
because I was really struggling to protect her. I was, trying to get her to see what to me was common sense. But sometimes when we are lonely and we so badly want love, want to feel loved, to her, this was the only option. She didn't meet people in the day-to-day. And, in COVID, this was before COVID, but COVID made all of that even worse, I think, especially for elderly people. And so it was, the magician card, he's right side up, he presents well. Right side up, he is somebody who is meant to be in front of people, writing, speaking, teaching, entertaining, like I'm a magician. But upside down, which was how her magician fell, he's the con artist. He's the trickster. It's smoke and mirrors. What you see is not what you get. It looks like magic, but it's a trick. So, it's kind of a heartbreaking story, but you will see basically how this woman was taken for a ride, and how fiercely she wanted to believe in this person. And we do these things, when we really want something, it's easy to convince ourselves. And so I talk in that chapter about some meditations, some very deep meditations. It was a hard chapter for me to write, because it required me to go very personal, and really to share some stuff that a lot of people might think that I'm a bit bonkers, with my meditative experiences and the messages that I got. But like I said, with all of the stories, it's as much about my growth as it is about my clients, and about boundaries in many cases. that's the magician chapter.
No, I appreciate you giving some details, and it's interesting that we selected one that was maybe on the darker side. But your book is called Life Lessons, and so that's really what you're trying to reveal, right? And so, so knowing the cards. Now, a lot of times, so you read for people. People come to you as an expert of the message of this deck, and the book specifies the major arcana. And I was going to say, but you read, of course, an entire 78 card deck. Is that how many cards it is? Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, I was just going to say there are 78 cards, but each card has two meanings, whether it's right side up or upside down, what we call reversed. Some tarot card readers do not read reversals. I think that's a waste. I think that there's so much depth, and we need that reversed energy as well to tell the stories. That's just me personally, though. Some people call it dignities, that a card has sort of positive aspects and negative aspects or dignities. But I read it. So whatever double 78 is, I should know that. 6, carry that.
A lot, yeah. I got my phone here. But yeah, exactly. So it's a lot to know. And like you say, I mean, the cards, sometimes I may not specifically know the meanings of the cards, but the images themselves have you can look at them and see how it applies to you. I remember the first card that was ever pulled for me, I was in a love triangle, and the card that came up was I guess that would be the 3 of Swords with a heart with 3 swords stuck into the heart. Now, I didn't have to know the meaning of that card to realize how profound that was speaking of my situation. And then I don't know what ended up happening, but I don't know the rest of the cards from there, but I was hooked after that. I was like, wow, this is pretty uncanny. Now, I would like to talk a little bit about the major arcana, because those are going to be some of the images that people see a lot: the sun, the moon, the world.
They're the most famous tarot
Empress
cards.
Yeah. So what do you know about that? I mean, do you have any little historical background on this, or
So some tarot decks are only major arcana, and I have a few of those. I like the minor arcana as well. You think of the major arcana as the milestones in life. Okay. We all have a birth, a beginning, which would be the Fool. The magician can also represent being a teenager. By the way, we were talking about the magician. We have our elderly people. We have our mothers, our fathers, our lovers, our warriors, our aspirations and drive, which would be the Chariot. We have our goals of money, like the Wheel of Fortune. Oh, you're so on it to be popping these cards
Tony.
up. and the major arcana covers all of these milestones, these big stages in life.
Interesting.
So they're really beautiful cards. Now, the minor arcana, some people will call them, and some people call the majors the trumps. Since Donald Trump, that name has come to mean something else. So I think it doesn't get used as much, but they are also known as the trump cards. And the minors are also known as the pips. The minors fall more in line with a regular traditional deck of playing cards, and it's the day-to-day stuff. We have suits just like playing cards, and so in the same way that you would have spades and diamonds and hearts and clubs, we would have, for spades, we would have swords. For diamonds, we would have pentacles. For hearts, we would have cups. And for clubs, we would have wands, or sometimes they're called staffs. And they embody the elements. So the swords are air and thought and action. The clubs or the and now I'm mixing them all up, or the wands are our imagination and enthusiasm and energy. The pentacles are things of the career and money and the earth. And then the cups are love and emotion and the flowing. So this is why we can read from a regular tarot deck if we want to.
Interesting, right? Okay. Now I can see that. And there's so much to know here. Do you want to share another major arcana life story
Sure.
from the
Let's
Tarot
see.
Diaries, if you will, So
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
another good one?
So I had. Let's talk about you. You'd put the Chariot up there, and I had a story. A young man who I used to read for all the time, and he wanted me to read about a person he named, and he didn't tell me anything at all about this person. And I put the cards down, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this doesn't look good." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I'm seeing a lot of darkness. I'm seeing cards, like the person looked dead to me." And he said, "That's because he's dead."
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, "Oh, wow." And so we got into it, and he said he wanted me to communicate with this energy. Now, I should say that I never set out, and I don't bill myself to be a medium, but the tarot does allow me to, and I've learned this just from clients doing this kind of thing, asking me. They don't necessarily tell me if someone's passed. They just say, does this person have a message for me, or what is this person thinking? And so this particular young man who was deceased, I saw him having great upset around his mother, and it looked like a lie had been told. And the reason I matched this with the Chariot was because he had been out with some friends, and he had died in a car accident where the driver, who was not this young man, it was somebody else, the driver had been drinking, and they had a terrible accident, and this young man had died, and they put him in the driver's seat to save their friend from taking the rap. And so the mother had believed that her son had, had this terrible accident and killed himself. And the energy was showing otherwise, that, he wanted his mom to know the truth, because the truth was that he had gotten sober over the years. He used to have a problem. She thought he went back to his problem, and he didn't. And so there was a lot of pain in that chapter. And I talk about my ethical dilemmas of when I learned something like this. You can't just march down to the police station and say, "Oh, I saw this in the tarot card."
Right.
Sometimes I get information that I don't know what to do with, in the real world, and or how to handle it, and can be kind of upsetting. So I talk a lot about that, about this young man's place in the whole story, and these are complicated stories.
They are.
In many cases.
They are. But they're complicated cards, too. There's so many different ways to look at it. And I think it's great. I mean, I think it's brave to share these. And I'm sure that it must have been cathartic in some ways for you as well to, I don't know, maybe to take what you've worked on, I mean, as a writer, right? And align it with your other craft as a reader, as a intuitive.
Yeah. And I think, getting back to the Chariot, what I like to teach the readers, if they care, like some people are just going to read it for the stories. And I've had some people who have nothing to do with tarot who tell me it's a page turner and it's fascinating. And they're just interested as lurkers, kind of watching this whole
Gotta
thing.
learn somewhere, yeah.
Others are learning tarot, or maybe they're even experts themselves, and they're interested in how I'm doing it. And I do like to say that there are not hard and fast rules here. And sometimes we are riffing just off the picture. Like in that case of that Chariot story, the Chariot is an actual vehicle.
Yes.
It was a car.
Exactly.
And, but for another person, I might say, "Oh, you're driven, you're ambitious, you're successful, you're reaching your destination, you're victorious." I mean, it has all of those meanings embodied in it as well. And it just depends on where your intuition takes you with how to how to read it for the client.
Yes. And I wanted to ask you if people, what it's like having a reading done for you versus doing your own reading. So
Yeah,
what's your opinion
I get
on
that question a lot. Doing one's own reading is tricky because we have bias and we have the things we want to see and we have fears and we have the things we don't want to see. And the tarot can kind of play tricks with you that way. So I say if I can be blank about something, if I really don't care all that much whether I'm going to see this answer or that answer, if I'm just curious about which movie to go see on Friday night, if it's not going to change my life, that's one thing, and I'm happy to read my own cards for that. If I want to look at the safety of my son on a trip, that's something I have a lot invested in, and I care very deeply about the outcome. And I'm probably not going to read that question. It's a matter of, can you be blank about it? I think that's why the best readings are for strangers. Mm-hmm. And when we read for a stranger, I don't know your past. I don't know your objectives or ambitions or fears. And so I can just hook in and deliver the message, and with no judgment, no wishes for you one way or the other. I mean, of course, I'm always wishing the best for people. And when I start a reading, and this is especially true if I read for someone who's particularly challenging, I usually have a little bit of prayer or meditation time, and I usually ask to channel the wisdom that you need, because you are so loved by God, and that you are sharing the source energy with me, and that we are truly one. And I just feel that helps me to kind of connect best with you and give you that information you most need.
That's fantastic. Well, I think that's a great little warm-up to pull a card for our listeners.
Okay. So you want just one card?
Well, I mean, I'd love two if we could do it. Two, maybe three. I mean, if you want to do past, present, future.
Let's do a trinity. Let's do a holy three.
That would be wonderful.
All right, and so we're just focusing on you, on everyone, on truth be told as a channel itself.
I would like that this message come through, that anybody hears this for any time, that they're going to get something from it, that it applies. So we're transcending time and space.
Okay, I like that. All right, Bonnie, let's tune in for a second. All right, so I'm putting my 3 cards down.
The shuffle is happening. Do you do a shuffle and then cut the deck?
Yeah. So our first card is the Page of Cups in reverse. And this is a card of holding emotions in. It tends to be, pages often can be young people, but cups are always about expression and emotions. And when it's in reverse, there is some worry or concern around the idea of holding in emotions. And so what I would say is, this is kind of some advice, that we need a way for these emotions to flow. We need to, I like to think of emotions like the weather. And so they have to be felt, but they have to be released too. And that's a real quandary, especially for spiritual people, because we tend to talk ourselves into, got to stay positive, and gosh, I just came out of COVID, and I was really frustrated with myself because it was the only time I'd ever had it. And I had this belief that I was somehow had transcended it and it wasn't going to happen to me. And I was, and maybe God just needed to humble me a little bit. But so some of my work was in really being sad that, okay, this happened to me and a really rotten month because October, this is my month. I'm so busy, I have so many events and parties and appointments, and I had to clear my calendar and get well. And so I had to feel that stuff to release it. And as you can see, just because I'm here, I'm on the upswing. Still a little coughing now and then, but doing remarkably well.
Good.
And so that's our first card. So that's about feeling that stuff and not squashing it down and not burying it. So our second card is the Eight of Pentacles. People see the Eight of Pentacles and, he is working and it's kind of an assembly line here. He has this pentacle underneath the bench. He's keeping a little for himself, It's a card of being busy, but I like to think of it as slow and steady wins the race.
Okay.
It's a card of routine. It's a card of process and program. This seems to be an important thing for us all to look at right now. So much better to get up at a certain time every day and have your regular workout and have your healthy planned diet. And let's have your routine to keep things running in order. And then our third card is the Empress in reverse. Now, this is an interesting card. The Empress, right side up, she's Venus, or some people read her as Gaia. She's mother energy. And because mothers are creative, they create, right. It is a card of creativity. But in reverse, it feels like we're either not creating, or sometimes it can feel like problems with mothering or motherhood. So just for everybody out there, I would say, ask yourself, could this be, there you go, could this be about your mother or needing to reach out to your mother? Or, is there an issue or a problem with mothering or motherhood that you need to look at? And if that does not feel relevant, then I would turn it toward your creativity and say that creative impulses are not being used. And this is a time maybe over this winter. I did pull 3 cards, so maybe think of that as the next 3 months.
Okay.
Maybe November, December, January, or for a good part of the winter anyway. And it's a time that the creative stuff needs to be expressed.
Wow. I think maybe also when you mention Mother Gaia, maybe it's about our planet too.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's another way to expand on that.
An interesting way to look at it. But it's really great. And it's fun to see, again, your command of the symbols on the cards as well as knowing how they apply. That's what it's for. And they really do work in an uncanny way. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's so great.
And I've seen people read who don't know what the cards mean. And there's actually a story in chapter 2 of my book of somebody who was drunk at a party, and he just grabbed my cards and he said, "Let me read for you."
Oh. Whoops, about that? Oops. Goodness, hold on.
Yeah, we're just technical difficulties really quick here. This is an example of, drunken partygoers thinking that they can be tarot card
readers. There we are. Can you hear me?
It's a little bit echoey, Julia.
Okay,
somewhat. Let's see any ideas how we would.
How about now?
I think we can finish off.
No, hold on.
It's okay. You give it a try, but we're happy to just.
Okay, that's really strange that happened. Sorry about that.
We definitely got you for the last several minutes. We hear you fine, just not quite as clear as before.
Well, are you
able to hear me at all?
And now you're back.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, you know what? It's telling me my default mic will be used. Interesting.
Whatever that means. But you will figure that out.
I'm not sure what that means, but okay. But you can hear me.
Yes, you sound fantastic now.
Okay, great. So this guy was drunk and he just grabbed the cards and kind of riffed off the pictures. And he gave me a surprisingly accurate reading.
Okay. And
that's because the pictures have so much information. I always say that the greatest enemy of intuition is being afraid to be wrong. And he obviously wasn't thinking about any of that. He was just goofing off.
He was just being free and wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's good. Well, I'd love, we welcome people to find Julia on her website. Go ahead and run that off for us, your site.
Yeah. My website is juliagordonbramer.com, and Gordon, Gordon, and Bramer, B as in boy, RAM as in Mary, ER, and no hyphen in the web address there. You can find me there. You can send me an email through the website. You can see my rates and that sort of thing, although I do need to update the site a little bit. But I'm available there. I do phone, I do video readings. I do, a lot of people do parties these days online, which is kind of fun.
Cool.
Where they'll book me for a couple of hours, and a bunch of girlfriends will all take turns with a glass of wine and sit in front of the camera and talk to me and get a reading. I do readings all over the world. So WhatsApp has become a popular app for me with my international clients. And so some people prefer the anonymity of just a phone call or even email readings. Others are like to see me and like to see the cards. If you're in St. Louis, you can get one in person. And of course, I come to events, and not a stranger to jumping on an airplane and flying to a city to do a corporate event or a big fancy birthday party or something like that.
Fantastic. I always like to end our conversation to get your general pulse on where we're at in these times where there's more interest than ever in mysticism, in magical ways. And and yet there's also, we talked about this before we started the call, there's also challenges. I mean, in October 2023, as we tape, there's a lot of challenges. And so, Julia, what's going on? Because I like I said, I mean, we've got this platform, Truth Be Told has this platform that we can reach people with positive messages, with tools to help work through challenges in their life. So I just wanted to say, I mean, you've been doing this for a while. How do you feel we're doing? And some closing words to keep people feeling encouraged and also having them explore.
Right. Well, gosh, COVID, of course, changed everything for all of us. And just with the vibe, just with the energy, and it was kind of becoming problematic even in the years prior. I would see in my Facebook memories, every year I was like, from 2016 on, I was saying, oh, it's got to be better. It's got to be better. It seemed to be getting worse, But and here in St. Louis, of course, we had the Ferguson riots and all of that. But I guess to me, we are being called to be the light and to very consciously focus on being a source of healing, and to ask, does the world need more of this energy? And it is so easy to get pulled into the darkness. You spend, a little too much time on Twitter. You get, listen to the news too much. It's really hard to come out of that. And so we really have to protect ourselves, and we have to understand that there's a balance between total ignorance and being swallowed up in the darkness. And so I keep informed. And yet, I think Jesus said something to the effect of to be in this world, but not of this world. That's my goal. And I have to live here. I am an active student and teacher of A Course in Miracles, which I started a study group actually in 2020 because I felt it was so desperately needed. And that group is my heart. I mean, they really keep me in alignment, in addition to a Buddhist women's group that I participate in weekly. And I think we need that. We need community. We need to lift each other up. We need to kind of pull each other out of the muck when we're all going to fall in it emotionally, mentally, now and then. And we need to be a light more than ever, because there are some people in some really dark, desperate times right now. And it can be exhausting to be a healer. And I consider myself a healer on the spiritual level. I consider myself to be just a source, a foundation for a lot of my clients. And that takes a lot of responsibility, and it's not for the faint of heart, but giving up is not an option.
Right.
And I think, it's keeping our good mental health. Spiritual health is mental health.
Right. Beautifully said. Thank you. And also, I just want to wish you well. Hope you feel good. And also, congrats on the release of your book, Tarot Life Lessons. It really sounds like you've had some incredible stories to share with us, but also with interweaving it with that information about, one of this very well-known and beloved source of divination, of spiritual wisdom. It's cool. Thank you very much for being here, Julia.
Great to meet you, Bonnie.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you in that Course in Miracles study group. I want to join for that. Cool.
Awesome.
Take good care. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'm Bonnie, and this is Truth Be Told Transformation. Tony Sweet is on live Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific for the original Truth Be Told. He has so many amazing interviews that he's done through the years. So I hope that you have a chance to check out the new shows that come on Fridays, as well as our archives at the Club Paranormal Network on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget, Robert Hensley also has the Minuteman Report, and we have all kinds of back shows as well. Be sure to share, be sure to follow, and be sure to keep shining that light. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.